Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. With a little bit of college hoops, not a huge Saturday of mega matchups and all that good stuff in college basketball. But what I can say is there was one story that, in my opinion, was the biggest and one of the, frankly, coolest stories that we saw in college basketball, not only this season, but that we've seen in a long time. And it came from Lexington, Kentucky, in a game where Kentucky beat the brakes off of Georgia. Okay, listen, the final score was not reflective of how dominant Kentucky was in this game. It turned into a ref show late. There was all sorts of whistles. The second half was really marred by the refs. But Kentucky puts up well over 100 points in a win over the Georgia Bulldogs. But it's not just that a top 10 team beat a good conference team at home. It was how it happened and the circumstances around it, and a follow-up from Friday's show, because Saturday was the debut of Zvonomir Ivisic, Big Z, a player that took over college basketball social media on Saturday night. And so I want to break it down. I want to talk about Kentucky. But when I tell you this isn't just a big win, but an important win because an important piece was added to one of the best teams in college basketball, this is big and it's cool. And let's go ahead and dive in. So if you listen to Friday's show, we talked about a kid named Zvonomir Ivisic, a freshman at Kentucky. And I kind of gave you the backstory. I think everybody knows. But listen, this is a kid is a 7'2" player from Croatia. Tested the NBA draft waters last summer. He played overseas, played professionally in Europe, tested the draft waters, came to the US, did the workouts, whatever, and ends up withdrawing from the NBA draft. At that point, everyone just kind of assumes he's going to go back to Europe, whatever, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, like a random Friday afternoon, we start to get word that, oh, this kid, 7'2", really talented, he is being recruited by Kentucky, and then like 2 days later, he commits to Kentucky. So it was a wild recruitment, but Kentucky late in the summer was able to snag a superstar European dynamic prospect. The problem is everything that has happened since, and this is what we talked about on Friday. Took a while for Kentucky to admit him to the school, and then the frustrating part was even after he got admitted, the NCAA really just dragged their feet with his commitment or with his, eligibility, basically, for lack of a better term. And again, we talked about this on Friday, but I was frustrated because I sat there and said, wait a second now. This is a kid that he is playing college basketball in an era where every single transfer is immediately eligible. That isn't hyperbole. That is literal. On top of that, we have European players all over college basketball that are eligible. And the issue seemed to be that he earned money as a professional overseas. Oh, by the way, literally every player of importance is earning money, and a lot of money playing college basketball. So it made no sense. I went on a rant, but to my credit, I said, look, my sense is that we are getting towards the finish line. On Saturday afternoon, Mitch Barnhart, the AD of Kentucky, officially announced that Big Z, Zvonomir Ivisic, was eligible. And I guess we didn't even know at that time, but the assumption is, oh my goodness, we might actually see this kid play on Saturday. And so that's why this is so big, because Big Z made his debut. And when I sit here and say it wasn't just that he made his debut, first of all, the fans were so fired up. I give those Kentucky fans credit. They've had his back from day one, whatever. But then he steps on the court and he looks like a 7'2" skinny Jokic. It was unbelievable. First possession, he's on the floor, block shot. Second or third possession, he catches the ball in the lane, behind the back pass, wide open three to Antonio Reeves, Kentucky star player who's in the running for SEC Player of the Year. Bucket, three, timeout, Rupp goes crazy. Couple plays later, hits a three. Couple plays after that, hits another three. Couple plays after that, hits another three. In total, in his first 5 minutes in college basketball, this kid, and by the way, I think everybody listening to this segment probably watched the game or at least highlights. Torres didn't even do justification on how cool this was. As in his first 5 minutes of college basketball, 11 points on 3 of 3 3-point shooting. By the way, he added a couple blocks into the mix as well, as he just had a debut for the ages for the Kentucky Wildcats. And so when you look at the debut, Kentucky goes ahead and wins again. The score is not reflective of how dominant Kentucky was in this game. But I just bring it up to say this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And now here is the question. Kentucky, who I said on Friday's show, well, I said Wednesday. Remember Wednesday? I said I believe there are 3 teams that are a cut above everybody else in college basketball: UConn, Carolina, and Kentucky. Well, Kentucky just added a 7'2" unicorn, and I hate that term, but I think it's applicable here, to a roster that is already in the top 10 with a bunch of NBA draft picks. And so the question becomes, is Kentucky the favorite right now? I don't know. UConn's really good. Tennessee's pretty good. UNC's pretty good. Purdue's pretty good. Whatever. But I don't think there is a single team that Kentucky will play the rest of the year that they can't beat. And if you want to sit here and say you think they're the best team in college basketball because they have the highest upside in college basketball, I am not here to argue with you about it. First off, Big Z appears to be as good as advertised. And we know how all this stuff goes. A lot of times you get these hyped, recruits or international players, and it doesn't feel, they don't live up to the expectations, or they're not quite as good. And we'll see, if Big Z can continue to live up to these expectations as the season wears on. I get that it's college basketball. I get that it's easy. I get that it's not easy, excuse me. I get that it's a process. I get that as more teams get more tape on him, listen, he's going to have highs and lows like any freshman in college basketball. But for him to do what he did on Saturday after essentially not playing competitive basketball at all for 6 months, that's unbelievable. And 2, why I do think that he puts Kentucky even in another stratosphere. And I say that about a team that I said earlier this week was the 2nd or 3rd at worst best team in college basketball. He's both very talented, and he also brings the one thing that they need, which is size and rim protection. This is the crazy part. Kentucky was already good. Kentucky was already in the top 10. But the one thing they were really lacking was depth in the front court and rim protection. Well, this kid is 7'2". Defensively, I can't sit here and say I've seen enough of him to know if he is elite, but he's got great instincts, protects the rim, had 3 or 4 blocks in his debut, and he just brings exactly what this Kentucky team needed. If you watched the loss to Texas A&M a few days ago, they just didn't have enough big bodies. Texas A&M, too many offensive rebounds. The loss to Kansas early in the year, I don't remember the stat line, but Hunter Dickinson went for a bunch of points and a bunch of rebounds, okay? But to have this kid now, it's just another big body in a front court that desperately needed it. But beyond that, and this is the cool part, this is the part that matters, this is the part that's important. What he does is exactly what Kentucky is already doing. It's not as though he's 7'2" and he just clogs the paint. Because if you've watched this Kentucky team, a lot of really talented guards, 4 or 5 guards, I don't think it's hyperbole. If you include Justin Edwards, who's more of a wing than a guard, they have 5 guys that are either in the backcourt or on the wing that could potentially be drafted this year. Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner, Justin Edwards, I just mentioned, Reed Shepherd, obviously, Antonio Reeves, who's the leading scorer and probably the SEC player of the year as a 5th-year guy. Listen, I'm not a draft expert, but you listen to the Jimmy Dykeses of the world, the Jay Billises of the world. They say they think he could get drafted this year. So you add in those 5, and the last thing you want to do is add in a big center that's stiff, that's not mobile, that doesn't help them, and I guess you would say, what's the right word? That doesn't, basically a big guy whose game doesn't match the guard's game, okay? I'm trying to think of the word. I don't know why I can't remember it, but anyway, you get the point. And so that's not what you want, and that's not what this kid is. He's big, he's athletic, he heightens all of the things that you need without limiting anything, especially on the offensive end. He's still he can shoot, he can post up, down low, spacing, ball movement doesn't slow down with this kid on the court. And so when I look at this team, is this the best team in college basketball? I don't know. UConn's pretty good. Tennessee's really good. Purdue's really good. But couple things. I don't think there's one with more pure basketball talent than the Kentucky Wildcats this year. And I think the other thing is, as long as they can keep all of these guys at their minds right, because obviously, look, as the season goes on, there's going to be draft stuff and this and that, but it hasn't been an issue so far. But as long as you can keep these guys' minds right, they're still going to get better. That's the crazy part. I keep going back to this. You just added a 7-foot potential first roundish type pick to this roster. Justin Edwards still has not really gotten going. And so if you can keep all of the positives, all of the positive energy, all of what they do well, which is spacing, ball movement, they're the most unselfish team, even though they're maybe the most talented team. If you can keep all of that while also getting better, also bringing along Justin Edwards, also bringing along Big Z, it's scary season for Kentucky, man. So I don't want to make too much of it, but I am here to tell you, anyone who doesn't think that this team is in the short conversation of national championship contenders, but more importantly, of all the championship contenders, I think they have the most room to grow, the most room to get better. Like, respectfully, Purdue is kind of what they are right now, right? Like, there's certain teams, I don't know, even UNC. I love UNC. I don't know how much better they can get. They got a bunch of 5th, 6th-year guys. Kentucky's got a bunch of freshmen. Some of them aren't even playing well. One of them just got eligible on Saturday. So congrats to Kentucky fans. I hope you enjoyed day 1 of the Big Z experience. I can only hope the rest of it is just as good.